here. So thank you for coming. I am so grateful that you guys have all come to hear us talk. My name is Brooke Lacey. I have been on a lot of panels about women in tech, and I don't really see that many familiar faces, but I like that because it's kind of, we can talk about new stuff. But I feel like the conversation needs to be different. It's kind of old, right? Like we've talked about women in tech for a little too long. So if you have been to one of my other panels, you remember maybe some different characters. And we kind of talk about the same stuff and that gets boring. So who I brought today, come on in, is a little bit different than you might expect, but we have perspectives on things that that we should be talking about, as opposed to just the same old stuff with, you know, kind of living on the outside of the world of tech. And we are going to talk about some imposter syndrome. How many of you know what that is or feel it a lot, even the guys? And I know I put on there like also being a girl gamer, but I'm actually the only one that plays video games, so we can take that offline. That was kind of before I chose my two friends to talk with me. So like I said, we're kind of disrupting the normal everyday women in tech conversation. When you'll hear about Brittany's conversation and story, she's the quintessential millennial. Any millennials here? Because we're going to talk about, put your hands up. I'm like, yeah. Because I'm going to tell you something, like, I really believe that the millennials are going to save the world. So we're going to talk a lot about generational issues. I mean, still in the gender part of things, because we're all three business owners. So we're going to talk about being women tech business owners and like the issues that come up in that. But because of this generational gap, I feel like we now have other things to talk about. So Brittany being a business owner of like having to know the software that she's selling to her clients, no matter what, because everything's tech. When we talk about women in tech, really isn't much of a thing anymore because everything is tech. If you don't have a tech background or something that has to do with that, at any job, you're going to be left behind, right? How many of you don't use tech in your job? None of you. How many of you don't use tech at school? Like,
None.
None. That's very funny. But I probably think he's funnier than everybody else because I'm his mom. Anyway, and then with Amber being a content strategist and content marketer, she really had to, and both of them did, it wasn't really a choice. They had to move into the tech world or else be left behind. So moving from editorial to being a technologist, or else again, gonna be left behind because that stuff is gonna be no longer, right? I will tell you my story, and I am 43, I will be 43 in May. We're gonna say these ages, not that I care, because I don't look 43. But we're gonna say these ages because the generational divide has a lot to do with what issues we deal with as women. So, I never write notes, but I just want to make sure that I'm like staying on task. Otherwise, I'll just talk for like 2 hours and then they'll be really mad at me and they won't ask me back.
No, that's fine. You can do all of that.
Yes, they're like, that's totally fine. All you have to do is sit and look pretty.
Perfect.
I'll just tell your stories. So, so I said that, you know, tech, women in tech really isn't like the thing anymore. And maybe that's why we have to have these women in tech talks. So that we can, right? Does that make sense? Like we have to start mixing that up a little bit and realize that it just, we've got to talk about other things. So based on the generational issue, oh, it's really hot. I'm going to tell you my story. So turning 43, I'm a Gen X. How many Gen X are here? Hi, because how many of you Gen Xers really believe that we had it best? We had the best of both worlds, right? Like, we grew up with nothing. I say that, nothing. It was just like stones and running around like kicking stones down the street, which probably. And then like, and then it was everything. like all of a sudden, because the tech universe just blew up. I really believe that Gen X had it the best, and that we can sort of mentor the younger people, and we just have a different perspective. And so my story is that in 1992, I had this after-school job at a car dealership answering phones, I guess questions, and they wheeled in this, I don't even know the brand, you know, people can like name off like the Apple with 2 gigabyte or, you know, megabytes, I don't remember, it was just awesome to me. It was this huge, you've seen them, you know, monitor, and the gray or, you know, taupe colored, whatever, and it was beautiful. It had Windows 3.1, not even like Windows 98. It was Windows 3.1. And you've heard all those stories about the black screen with the green writing, and that was it. And I remember feeling like, this is everything. This is like gonna be my life. I want everything to do with these computers. I wanna be with them. The elegance of the code spoke to me. The fact that it didn't talk back to me. It did what I asked it to do, what I told it to do. It didn't hit me. It didn't yell at me. It was such a reprieve from the traumatic childhood that I had. So this is something I really believe, that women, when we talk about technology, we talk about it almost as if it's not an inanimate object. It was really like a spiritual thing for me. And that was when I decided that was it for me. I mean, it's like, the tech comes so naturally to me, and it makes me so happy. I mean, I like literally tattooed it on my body. It's that important to me. So, and again, as we go through this, I really never experienced the whole, you know, women can't do it, men can only do it. I just never did. Maybe I did, but I just didn't choose to like deal with it or hear it. That's not to say that other women didn't feel that, especially when I was going to school. So I got into the computer science school at Northern Illinois University. I should say that I'm from Chicago, been here 15 years. And we're gonna talk about that too, how geographically there's a big difference. But I don't know if back then, thank you. I don't know if back then it was really like a woman issue. I thought a lot about this yesterday. I think because there was just not a lot of people doing computer science in 1994 when I got to college. So it wasn't really like, oh, there's this percentage of women and percentage of men. It's just, there just wasn't a lot of people doing it. So it was a totally different thing than for when Brittany was in school or when Amber was in school, or, you know, however that works. So again, generational. So that was it for me. Like, when I got to college, it was like freedom. I'm like on my own, I'm 18, living in the dorms. Took my first math class, my first computer science class, was like, oh my God, this is it for me. Like, I'm finally realizing I'm smart. I know what I'm gonna do for the rest of my life. I got an internship at Sears, at the Sears Tower, Chicago. You've all heard that. And that was a huge deal. 1,500 people, I think, applied for the job, and only 25 of us got it. Worked on a replenishment system in assembler code, and that's when I realized I wanted nothing to do with computer science. Nothing. I wanted so badly to be a part of the, like, bridging the divide between computer science and the super technical and the people. So fast forward, moved to Idaho. I started working for Albertsons. Back then it was Super Value. Remember that? I sure do. It was when they merged. And I technically worked for Super Value, but at the Albertsons Center, and I worked for their help desk. So when they merged, there was a lot of stores, a lot across the country. And I ended up then managing the pharmacy help desk. So pharmacy is much bigger deal because of the money coming in for that. So I was the only woman manager, lead, trainer, even on the help desk. Again, nobody really treated me different. It was just a thing. It was more of an issue of, where are the girls applying for the job? where are they? I will hire them. Where are they? And so 2012, that company was going a little wild and crazy, so I decided to start my own business. That's usually always how it happens. Like, if you're happy in your job, then you really don't ever think about starting your own business, or maybe you do, but I started a company called Tech Savvy, and in 2011, quit my job, started that, did a lot of hardware repair. We marketed it as woman-owned and operated. So it wasn't necessarily that, like, that was a big thing for me, but it was a big thing for my customers. So people would literally, and usually a lot of women, would come in with their broken computers and be like, we're here because it's woman-owned and operated. And at certain points I'd be like, it's just sad that there's no other woman-owned and operated. Because I would say, like, it's the only one in the Pacific Northwest, because it's actually true. And, you know, I wish that wasn't the truth, but it did bring in people. That was like the marketing piece of it. So I've now since gotten back into software development, web development, and so I don't have employees anymore. Things always just change. And right now, I feel like my entire career, I've still been involved with just helping people. Yeah, I've got a tech degree and I can build a computer from the ground up, but what I really do is help people, and that's the way we look at things a little differently as women. I'm probably like bright red, it's so hot in here, sorry. But we're gonna talk about that. So I'm gonna let you guys talk about yourselves. You'll be fine. Everybody here is great, right?
We're all friends.
Everyone's friends. Yay! Say go, Brittany. And then we're gonna talk a little bit more about a few things together, and then I'm gonna open it up for questions, and we'll see how it goes.
Sure. So thank you for having me. I'm Brittany. I'm originally from Southern California. I moved here about 5 years ago. Sort of always been in the tech ecosystem, just growing up, as she said, in being a millennial, grew up with technology, all kinds of, you know, having the first iPod and all that good stuff.
You were like born with it in your hand.
Exactly, yeah, just right from the womb. Originally in California, I was in the finance industry, wasn't really what I wanted to do. Immediately moving to Boise, started with a tech startup in town where I wore plenty of hats, learned a lot. These days I'm the managing director and part owner of a company called SM Heuristics. You're probably wondering what the heck that means. So S standing for sales and standing for marketing. Heuristic is a process in which you test quickly in order to get quick results. So we work with a lot of SaaS companies, a lot of manufacturing companies, companies in the education and finance sectors. We use tons of technology, rely on it very heavily to sort of show growth with our clients. So,
yeah. It's like a lot of technology, because everything is technology right now. Yeah. There isn't like one or the other. Oh, I'm going to go into technology or I'm not.
Right.
You may not have that background, but you better figure it out, because everything is technology.
Well, then having it so easily accessible growing up, it's just sort of how you tend to learn things quickly, right? Versus going to college like a typical traditional way.
Exactly.
I never, I didn't do, that wasn't my path, but technology was always a tool for me growing up in order to do that. So.
Yeah. And Miss Amber?
Hi everyone, thanks for coming today and thanks for having me. I know Brittany and Brooke both, and through the tech world, it's sort of a connector in this community, because as any of you know, if any of you are from Boise, you know that the 6 degrees of separation rule does not apply. It's more like 2 degrees. So based on that rule, Brittany and I actually work together at the tech startup that she mentioned earlier, and we also work together now at SM Heuristics. But a little bit, rewinding back a little bit, I sort of stumbled into the tech world. Hackfort isn't a place that I ever thought I would be, or or belonged. I grew up in Boise. I'm a 5th generation Idahoan, and I thought my future lied in being a mom and a wife, a homemaker, and there's nothing wrong with those things, but they can also live alongside a pursuit in the tech field. And I sort of had to learn that the hard way. Professionally, I got started as a writer. I always wanted to be a writer. I was born with a book in my hand, maybe not the iPad, but the book. And so that was my path, or so I thought. And so I got started writing magazine articles, so regional publications, local publications. I would have my byline in those magazines. But as social media was coming on the scene, I can't even believe I'm saying that, because some of us remember when social media was just a trend and, oh, it'll pass. But there were several of the print publications that I was working for that were sort of resistant of this digital, the emergence of all things digital. And I was saying, we need to be embracing this. Print is not dying, but it needs to endure some sort of evolution. Otherwise, it's going to go away. And so I was always pushing this with the publishers I worked for, and many of them that refused to embrace social media, embrace digital, they are no longer. And that sort of showed me that for me to be able to make a viable living, become a respectable professional, and stay with the times, there was no avoiding it. There was no avoiding social media. There was no avoiding online content in a way that we had never seen it before. And so I'm not a web developer. I'm not an SEO specialist, but as a writer, I had to learn aspects of those trades in order to be relevant. And so over time, I left the magazines in the dust and decided that the only way to stay, again, relevant and to stay afloat was to really embrace what was changing in the world of content.
And how old are you?
Don't have to say it.
No.
No. So
What generation are you?
I'm 34. I was born in '84, and so we're technically not true millennials in the sense that we're right on the cusp.
Yep.
But there are certain aspects of your adolescence that I don't relate to, and so I'm not Xennial. So we're right in between the millennial and then the Gen X.
And Brittany, you're 26?
26, yeah.
It always hits me like, but we're so much alike. It's like, no, you're not. But we have had to, I think, go faster as Gen X, right? Like we've had to, because technology has gone faster. So you guys are kind of born with it. So we each have much different like experiences coming forward.
Right.
It's interesting too, like when you said about making a living. It's not something we have talked about, but part of what I do sometimes, well, I'm asked to go and talk to groups of girls about getting into tech. Like the Micron Foundation has a Women in Tech Careers, and so sometimes we go out and buy them lunch and talk to them about being a woman engineer. And a lot of them have the question of like, you know, how much money will you make? And how many of you women, sorry guys, are in the tech field? And those of you who are in the tech field, how many of you did it to make money? Like that was one of your, I mean, knowing that, and it's okay, you don't have to like, we're all just friends here. I know I did. I wanted to make sure that I was set, like that I was in a field that was gonna, that I didn't have to depend on anyone. And maybe that's, you know, me being emotional and, you know, about my childhood and all of that. But we talk about that with these girls, that you can make money in the tech world. That's, we gotta take care of ourselves, right? So, no one? All right, yeah, I like it, that's, right? You,
yes.
I know you guys are like, this is how you make money. This is how
put in the
you
work.
make money, and you have to put in the work.
Yep.
But, I will say, I'm gonna call on you, okay? Ready for this? Okay, he's ready. So, part of that, like talking with the young people, because it's so different. We don't realize this. He was just telling me in the car that, because he takes a Tech 8, right?
Yeah.
Did Joseph take Tech?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, Joseph doesn't.
Well, I know he didn't, he wasn't.
But you guys know what I'm talking about, right? So it's in junior high, and the tech teacher, who I think is our generation, my generation, is really pushing for these like all girls classes and all, right? Like they're just doing these like all girl groups.
Oh yeah.
But you guys are like, what is the difference? Like we don't care, right? So
No.
that's just the interesting thing that I feel like we're pushing it. As parents, we're pushing that whole gender thing on the kids, and they're going, what are you even talking about? Like, nobody cares. And a lot of the girls are just like, we don't want to do tech. Like, stop pushing it on us. So it's kind of like, we gotta stop, like, thinking this. Now we're almost making it bad to, like, want to be a mom and homemaker and all of that. Like, we just need to be, like, inclusive. But anyway, there's a story, I'll tell you. This was like 6 or 7 years ago, so he was much younger and cuter. Just kidding, you're very cute.
Ouch.
And he was at Lego Robotics, and I picked him up, just a second. And I picked him up and I said, oh, well, like, how was it? Was there any girls in it? Because I'm always asking that. And he's like, yeah, come to think of it, it was like mostly girls. I'm like, that's cool. And he does this.
Okay, yeah. Revolution!
It's funny. It's not just me. It's funny, right? He goes, revolution! And I know that like half of it was making fun of me, and that's fine, because like I always talked about it, like girls need to be in tech, and you need to be inclusive, and he's like, whatever. So that being said, like keep that in mind when you, like if you have kids, if you're like concerned about this whole issue, they're not. They're just not. They don't see it. We're making a bigger deal out of it. Sometimes the girls just don't want to do it, and that is fine. So, okay, we got our good funny story. Good job. All right.
And now that I'm actually remembering, there was 3 boys in that class. I think there was like 10, 12 kids. Three boys, including me.
Yeah.
So
it's really just a matter of, oh, well, girls like Lego robotics as opposed to they want to be in Tech 8, or whatever it's called. So,
well, that sort of validates that it's not really being a woman in tech, or if it's not really about your age either. It's more so like maybe where you actually grew up, because like growing up in the United States, it's very different.
Yes.
Having all these opportunities for us.
Yep.
It's easy for us to just go ahead and take it, right? Versus if you're from a different country and you're wanting to pursue a career in computer science, it's much harder to obtain that because you don't have the same rights at that point.
Which I think is also sad because there's so many jobs and like there's just no women applying for them. So my friend Preston is here and he's the director of engineering, which apparently there's like 500, so that's not as exciting. I think it's exciting at Micron. He just got promoted. Yay, Preston. And tell us, what is the percentage of women to men on your team?
So my team, I run a kind of a smaller team. We basically take the memory that, our raw memory, NAND flash that they have, and we get it into your phones as a system or into your SSDs and stuff like that, into your laptops. My team is actually probably on the higher side comparatively. It's a 4-to-1 ratio though. So I've got a 10-person team and it's 80% male and 20% female. And a lot of that's because if I actually look at who's applied to be on my team and who I've had, it's probably about 25-to-1 in terms of who's actually applying.
Exactly.
But when it comes to the skills in the team, like, one of my new people, she's on her way over from Shanghai right now, Yolanda, I've got her working with, Huawei, one of the biggest companies in the world, like the biggest telecommunications company in the world overall, providing frontline support for them because she can do it. And it wasn't a matter of gender.
There's and the guys on the team don't see that either. Like, it just is what it is, but the women are not applying for these jobs. And what I've heard is, and there's different stories of, you'll have to Google this, but there's a very young lady who is the first woman on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. Of course, not necessarily tech, kind of tech. And they interview her and they're kind of making a big deal, and she's kind of like, why is this a big deal? The big deal is that no one is applying. Her boss is like, I really, I love what she does and I wish I could hire more women, but there are no women to hire. So I think that's where
I
the point
think
gets to.
something that, as we prepared for this discussion, we were sort of trying to determine, you know, what is the root cause of that? Why are certain hiring managers not having access to talented women who obviously are potentially out there?
Right.
Well, I was sharing a story of my childhood where I didn't have access to things like Legos or Lincoln Logs or, you know, those fun build-it types of toys. And we started talking about how young a young girl needs to be before she, or how young she is when she realizes that she either is or isn't set up for a certain path in life.
Mm-hmm.
And I really think that you said something wonderful, that it was along the lines of, if you're only thinking about tech as a teenager, it's too late.
It's too late.
And I think that it starts young. Gotta start young. If we want our young girls to have the same opportunities that young boys have, we need to be putting Legos in their hands, just as much as we're putting Barbie dolls in their hands.
Right.
Giving them access to tools and toys and that
To make the
spark
choice,
creativity.
like, just so that there's a choice to
Exactly.
be made. You wanna play with the Barbies, good on ya.
Yeah.
But
Legos too.
Right.
Make sure it's at least available.
you
Yeah.
must do.
Well, then, like you said, I mean, we're not gamers these days, but
Right.
like growing up, I did a lot of that with my brother and
Yeah.
all that stuff. So
Yeah.
it taught me a lot about problem solving and just
Exactly.
like having the capability to critically think, you know, harder about things and having the confidence to go out and pursue,
Right.
you know, the things that I was capable of achieving. So
Right.
it wasn't necessarily my gender, but it was just having the access to
Right.
those types of tools in order to discover that,
Yeah.
you know,
How many of you have daughters? I mean, kids too, but the daughters, how many of you restrict screen time to the point of like fighting with them? Good girl. And we can talk about that in a whole different conversation, but it's very difficult to say to a child, especially a girl, like, you can't be on that, like, we can't make it bad because that's the future. Like, I don't know. Again, what's that?
It's currency. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
well, it depends
Don't
what
make
they're
it
looking
bad,
at.
right? Like, well, yeah, but also raise your children to like not look at the bad stuff.
Right.
So
I don't
again,
have to.
a whole nother conversation. But the point though with the daughters, because that does pertain to what we're saying, is that we got to get to them young. I remember going into your classroom in first grade, so 10 years ago, or I don't know, long time ago.
12, no.
First grade, and I took them all into the computer lab at the school and asked them like, how many of you have a computer at home? All of them raised their hand. Like, it's too late when we get them at junior high and high school to figure out what they want to do. It really is. If they are interested in technology, you know, you have a daughter, is she just like all over it? I can't remember what you told me.
She's all over the place. She actually loves using it for like digital art. Like I
Yeah.
think that probably, you know, graphic design,
Yep.
something like that is something that she'll be very
Used for
into.
all of
But
that.
she just sees it as drawing, right?
Right.
Whether it's on her tablet,
Exactly.
whether it's on paper,
Exactly.
She draws.
Yep. We don't look at it like I still, even in the tech world, but being my age, I don't see it that way. Like drawing is drawing. It's like what his wife's an artist, and that's drawing. No,
It's very
all of it
technical,
is.
right? I
Right.
mean, tech, it means almost so many things
So many
now
things,
than
yeah.
it used to. It used to just mean developing code. Now
Right.
it's just this whole sphere of
Right.
everything we're living in. these
Exactly.
days, so.
Who has like a question or a comment or come on, somebody, anyone? Yes. Thanks. I mean, I'll just keep talking and talking and talking and talking.
So I do telehealth. Sort of in the tech. There's no job without tech. Like you said.
Exactly.
There isn't.
Exactly.
Mine is really heavy on the tech.
Yeah. What do you do?
I'm a telehealth provider. I'm a physician.
Oh, okay. Yep. Yep.
That's pretty on that kind of realm.
Yeah.
Helping people.
Yep.
It's true that that women don't apply, and this is known that often men don't wait until they pass all their requirements
Exactly.
to apply, but women tend to wait until they're 100% in requirements to.
Yep. How many of you have done that? Like you go to apply for a job and you go, I have 9 of those 10, so I'm not applying.
I used to do that.
You're like, nope, you're a dude. And that's what we're talking about. That's what happens. It's not bad or good, it's just what happens. I have 9 of those 10 things, I've done it. I do it in business. Like, well, I'm not gonna pitch that client because I may not be right for them, or, you know, I might swear too much, or, you know, whatever.
Well, that's
But
imposter syndrome too, right?
Exactly.
It's just doubting
That's
yourself
exactly
because
right.
you don't have this one thing on the list.
Right.
And not being able to have just the confidence to just go
Right.
for it and hoping.
And two, like, Preston and I talked about this as well, and I have with other male friends, that imposter syndrome is not a gender thing. It just isn't. It's just in different ways, right? Like, it's,
Describe more about when you're changing careers or when you're
Yeah.
transitioning from one type of thing to another. That's really when it happens, when you're questioning yourself.
Right.
Yeah, am I ready for this?
Yeah.
That's kind of usually when it happens.
yeah, that's so true. Who else?
I'm not exactly in the tech sector, I'm in the cycling mechanic.
Totally tech.
Bicycle.
It's totally tech.
I do put
Technical.
a lot of tech in my current job.
Yeah.
But I also have a second job as a bike mechanic,
Yeah.
and it is a huge male dominated field.
Yes, it
And I was
is.
the only person to apply to this particular shop. But what I find is not necessarily, I have huge support, and everybody's always great, but I always find that I'm second guessing myself.
Yeah.
I always feel that I have to prove to myself that I
100%.
belong here.
Yeah.
And so I'm killing myself, even though
Yeah.
I did a little mistake. Yeah.
And we're not here to, like, you know, say like, oh, that's, you know, good job, and we hear you. Like, it happens to us, happens to everybody, so we hear you. And
Well,
I wish there
another
was
thing
more
we were
women.
saying the other day was that something that women do bring into, you know, this realm of technology is empathy and being able
Right.
to, you know, self-reflect and talk about how you're feeling. A lot of
Right.
people have a hard time doing that.
Right.
And something women do bring to the table is being able to,
When people would come
Not
into the
separate
shop
that.
and like have, you know, they drop their hard drive or something, a lot of men, tech men, I don't know why I'm pointing at you, sorry, men in general, would techno babble, right? And I was always like, I looked at it like I'm a counselor, because they didn't come in, I'm not doing anything with their laptop. No, I am. I'm fixing their problem. Like, I'm getting their pictures back. Because when they walk in and, oh, my computer's broken, it has nothing to do with like, oh my gosh, I love this computer. It's the stuff on there, it's the feelings they have, it's the, you know, all of that. And it makes sense, right, that we women would be better at that than men. Case in point, my ex-husband was terrible at it, so. Anyway.
different conversation.
Well, he was my other technician, I should throw that in there. But we come at it with a different perspective, more of a mama bear perspective, and we want to take care of you. Like, I want to fix whatever problem you have, and yeah, it has to do with this technology thing over here too, but
But we have a good way of nurturing
yeah,
versus,
exactly.
you know, getting to the
Those
point.
Bringing heart.
burly dudes that like nobody wants to talk to. Just kidding. But I think you guys deal with that too, where you kind of have to recognize that female part of you as well, or I don't know if that's the right word, but to be more nurturing in that world, because it can be frustrating in a sense. Yeah.
And I'd say that there's honestly a lot of, in tech in general, right now, it's something that we need to root out more, but there's a lot of toxic masculinity that's not
Yeah.
actually gender specific.
Right.
Like, in fact, sometimes it's
Right.
actually more from some of my
From
female
the
coworkers
females.
who are trying to show, oh, I got it, I'm tough,
Exactly.
I'm just like, it's like, no, we're all here to try and solve problems, and those are the people
Yes.
that we respect. Like, once you sat down, and there is plenty, I mean, we have a long way to go in terms of diversity and inclusion.
Right.
And it's not just women in tech,
Right.
but that's a huge thing we gotta do. If I go to Singapore, I think we had this conversation.
Yeah.
I go to Singapore, half my engineers are women.
Yeah.
Like, literally,
Exactly.
same thing with Shanghai. And it's
Yeah.
like places that you usually would have associated with, you know, oh, that's
With it
behind-
not being
no,
that way. Yeah.
It's absolutely that way, you know,
Yeah.
in fact.
And we were
it's
talking
kinda
about
crazy.
Silicon Valley, how a lot of those women, they feel like they have to have pissing contests, and like, I mean, that's what toxic masculinity is, but like, that they have to overdo it. And we need to, as women in tech, stop that trend and pull back on that.
And I'll say when I hosted, I had, you know, a lot of you have, I won't mention the name, but a lot of you have their phones in your pocket right now.
Right.
When I hosted their data center business up here, you know, the people that I went to, not because of gender, but because of who they are, you know, was my friend Shannon, who's a transgender woman.
Right.
And my friend Juicy, because she's just frankly the best technology person we have in process. They wanted to learn more about our NAND. I brought in the people who I thought were best, and just happened that in this particular role was 2 other women helping me.
Right. Right. Who else had something? Go on.
Well, I'm always intrigued because you have a fear of failure that surfaces for a lot of people.
Absolutely.
But there's also the fear of success.
Yeah.
Which people often don't realize they even have.
Right.
And I'm not sure how much of a gender difference that is, but these psychological things that are so deeply rooted in our past experience that channel how we think is something. But if we know about them and we think about them, that be mindful, we can start addressing that, and that's important. As the words are coming out of my mouth, I'm realizing I'm guilty of both right now.
You're only human, it's okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, that's the nicest thing to me. But I'm here, if I may speak freely.
Yeah.
Because I'm here I'm not a spy, but I'm actually here doing one of the things I've been doing, one of the hats I'm wearing this month is I'm being research nerd for a team that is going to pursue SBA proposal to start a women's business center. Again.
I was gonna say.
We've only botched it twice, and then botched the last 2 or 3 proposals. Anyway, but it's a really powerful thing. What I would love to hear from you, in fact, from anybody, is, what does it need to do that may not be obvious? What is it they shouldn't be trying to do? A lot of people have opinions on that.
Yeah.
Is it? I feel a little. My expertise is entrepreneurship, but I'm not. As my girlfriend will tell you, I'm not an expert on women.
So
I'd be interested. What is it from the panelists? What would you say? What would be the one thing that a women's business center that would be serving Idaho, particularly the underrepresented parts of the population? What's the one thing they should do? The one thing they shouldn't do?
Well, I wrote my business plan with Karen Applegren at the Women's Business Center 10 years ago. So like all of that.
Karen is still a badass, by the way.
Well, and they have all that design, so yes. I'm not sure. Like I mean.
So what else should they do?
Great, have more of that. That would be awesome. But like I don't think there was anything that they did wrong or didn't provide. But also that was still 8 years ago. Things have changed a little bit, I think. But I don't know. I really, the experience I had with the Women's Business Center was great because it really was just us and sitting around talking with other women. So,
yeah, there's nothing wrong with that either,
no,
right? Yeah, it's just a way.
So what would you guys, I mean, if you could wave the magic wand and say, this center must have, or must not have, is there anything that jumps out at you that's maybe not being provided in the market now? We're not allowed legally to clone Karen, apparently.
I would say, I think something that I can't personally speak to because I don't have children, but I think that childcare for women wanting to pursue a career is a major obstacle and a major drain on their time and energy, and it prevents incredibly talented special women from entering the workforce.
So true, because
to remove that obstacle,
to pay for it, it's like women are like, nah, what's the point if I just have to pay for childcare?
Absolutely. I think that would be important. And you mentioned this briefly, the underrepresented communities. I think it's not something that we've talked about at length today, but I will wax poetic about that. That I think beyond women in tech, I think we need to be utilizing women of color in our community and connecting with them and providing them with the same resources and the same education and opportunities that that I as a white woman receive. I would like to see that throughout the community.
I've been going to Hispanic Chamber events, and it's like I'm just blown away by the savvy that's there, and Fun fact is, during the last recession, business formation and business success went down in every sector of the economy except Latina. Latina businesses grew in our sector, so I'm not sure what that means, but I bet that's really important.
Because we're rarely hardworking.
What do you think, Brittany? I mean, I know you were gonna say something.
No,
Yes, Brittany,
no.
please.
What's that?
Please, I mean,
I mean, it goes along the line is just empowering those that wouldn't have a chance otherwise, and women in particular too. It's just a matter of, we're always constantly self-doubting ourselves and our, you know, and our capability, but we're all capable of doing anything we want to do. We just, you know, pursue it, but having that support system in place. I don't really have an answer of what it shouldn't be, just because I'm not familiar with working with.
I like the idea of like having meetups for like our bike mechanic, you know, to be able to like find other people of that nature. There's probably not a lot of bike mechanic meetups for women, but you know, even just like some sort of support network where it's not necessarily starting a business, but it's supporting each other in the business. I know I was totally an island. There was literally no other women computer repair businesses anywhere. So I kind of did get into that like toxic masculinity. Like, I don't know if that's the right way to look at it, but I did kind of get my back up a lot. Like, well, fine, I'll just do it. You know, like I'm the only one doing it. So we have to, you know, be really careful about that too. So I don't know if that makes sense, but who else? Yes, Brody.
Okay, I'm gonna go like way back in time, like
Way back in time. He's 14.
way back in time. Well, no, like in the conversation when you're talking about like Legos and like Lincoln Logs.
Yes, Amber was talking about that.
Yes. Like maybe for like the people who can't afford, because you know the little bits of plastic with the bumps on them are freakishly expensive.
Yeah.
Which I found out the hard way. They're trying to save up enough money for it. Well, anyway.
What's mine is yours, brother.
Yeah. I just think that maybe if like you know like with like all like the Loot Crate boxes and all that sort of stuff, maybe if you just had like a package of Legos that you could like send over, like a company just sends over a little package of Legos, so you can just be like,
You should start a nonprofit doing that.
oh, that's really cool. Like
Legos in every swag bag.
Yeah, exactly. There's not enough of that, because what's the thing called, I can't think of it, Goldilocks or Goldilocks or something?
Goldilocks.
That's like the only thing I can think of. So you should start a nonprofit and find a way to do that.
One cool thing on Lego, they actually started, so they started Lego Friends, and that was still kind of pandering.
Right.
But they used that to get in, and now they've actually got a line for like Lego female scientists and other things like that.
I
They've
have
actually
seen
a
that.
lot better gender representation
Yeah.
in toys, and that type of stuff makes a big difference.
It
like,
does.
subconsciously.
It makes a huge
Sold out right
difference.
away,
Say again?
Sold out right away, so that's why I buy some.
Yeah.
Really? See, there's a market for it, Brody, start a
The
business.
NASA one, I think.
Yeah.
Huh, it's like Cabbage Patch Dolls.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so old.
I have one too.
Who else?
But how can we bridge that divide of the women applying for this stuff? How can we, I mean, yes, the early exposure, for sure, that helps. But I don't think that.
I see that as the only way right now.
Right now, the only.
I feel like the only way is to talk to our daughters and get into schools, go to your kids' schools, like getting to the young, your nieces, your like whoever.
But also how their teachers talk to them, because, I mean, recently, we got our daughter, you know, and her friends came home, and the teacher told them, oh, women cannot be firemen.
Oh,
Yeah, this happened 2 weeks ago. And then,
were they confused? Like maybe they thought like physically, like literally they cannot be hired as.
I kid you not, this happened.
Oh,
And a friend of ours, who's a wonderful nurse, put a Facebook post about it, of how the conversation with her daughters went.
Right.
And how they put this Boise Weekly article that talked about the Boise and Idaho's fire women.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
There's a lot of them.
there's a lot. There's a lot more than in other areas.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
So that's the thing, but it's happening in our schools. It's
It is
happening-
exactly, that's exactly what I'm talking about with his teacher, or like the situation, I'll get to you 1 second, like everything's on Google Classroom right now, right? And so I'm just gonna call you out, I love you, okay, but, I think that he struggles with the fact that some classes he can go to Google Classroom, some classes, one of your teachers is super old school and like literally gives him a piece of paper to like draw a map, and I'm like, I don't think that's fair to that generation, because that guy didn't, does that make sense?
This
Like,
way
we have
is
to
cool.
get to the teachers.
This way is cool, but I like this way better.
Well, it's, I think, easier for you to
'Cause-
like follow it if it's the same in every class, but that's not really,
Because then I asked my teacher, hey, can I just pull it up on like Photoshop, like get an image of a map
right.
on Photoshop and just bloop, 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 there's colors, there's the key. Here,
Right.
hand it in.
It's because I think the teachers are afraid, I think the parents are afraid. I remember, I do these workshops, and back then, it was just a while ago, did workshops for just girls on, we pull apart hard drives and old platter hard drives that aren't even a thing anymore, but, the moms would drop them off and be like, I'm so glad you're doing this, because I don't know anything about this. It's just so hard. I'm like, you know they can hear you, right? Like, don't say that. And then I find out they're like nurses. I'm like, how do you do that? Like, that's wildly difficult. So it is, it's the teachers, it's us as parents, sisters, aunts, like however it works. You don't have to have children to be around children, right? Like you can be examples of women in tech. And that it's okay. I have a friend, or I know this girl's a fighter pilot, and she was the only woman fighter pilot, but she was badass. I mean, she is. She just retired. But there's nothing. There's nothing. There's women football players. Well, there's one, but I saw her talk once. There's one woman football player. So there is no job that says like no, females are unable to apply. Does anyone know of any job that you can't apply for as a woman? I don't know. What was your comment, question? What's that?
But,
That's
Changing. In a lot of places it's changing.
Yeah.
anyways.
No, you're right. You're
Depends
right.
what church you're in.
I have a question more specifically for Amber.
Yeah.
For someone or a woman who might be, let's say, late to the game in the tech field, and realizing that obviously tech is here to stay and it's part of so many different jobs and professions. What would you say are valuable resources for someone to play catch up and to immerse themselves in the tech community?
That's an awesome question, because I found myself in that situation very much in my mid-20s. I was sort of looking at the road ahead and thinking, well, it's too late to pursue a degree in this field. Well, not too late per se, but I actually had a conversation with someone over at BSU that said, you could technically teach this program. Because at the time, when I was working as a content manager, that was a new field. I mean, that had pretty much just come up out of nowhere. And they said, we just don't have a program for you. And so I think I've always been a bit of a voracious learner, and so I love to read. I immerse myself in things that I think I love to read and learn. And I think that's the start of it. I think just having a passion and an interest for something is a great start. And once you have that foundation, you can find the tools. There are so many resources online that you can find, educational resources for a very minimal cost. There are colleges throughout the nation, Ivy League colleges, that offer free courses. It's a
MIT
simple-
puts their
MIT.
entire thing online.
You can
all of it.
Google this, free college courses, and you can find a lineup that will give you the best education imaginable. So, I mean, that's one resource, for instance. Another, depending on your field, for me, content management, copywriting, I follow on social media. I follow the thought leaders. I observe and listen to and watch what they're doing, and I pay attention, The American Marketing Association, for instance, is a great resource for my specific field. I think just being hungry is really the start of it. But the internet has just completely changed, you know, the way we gain information, the way we learn, and that's
I think
just the
something
start
for
of it.
me that I find success in is meeting others that are in that field too, and learning from them and what tools they use, or even just, you know, bouncing ideas off of them, and just networking really has helped me a lot. And we tend to forget the connections we have with people that actually really have helped us in our careers as well.
Yeah, I would say that is an awesome point too, because I think that, again, that 2 degrees of separation rule that I have in Boise, if you don't know the person that you want to know, someone you know can introduce you to them, most likely, and can provide you with mentoring, with resources, with guidance, that if you don't know where to begin, that's a great start. I mean, I reached my 5-year self-employment anniversary last July, and I would say the only way I was able to do it was due to the people that I knew, the support system I had, the cheerleaders, the people that helped, you know, propel me along. So
my cheerleader is here, so there's like nothing I can not do. That didn't make sense. Whatever, I'm not a writer. No, that's exactly right. Like having those people around you, always.
To
the
learn
people
from
to believe,
constantly.
and to believe in you, and it's just always about the people you surround yourself. And when we're self-employed and sitting in our house with the dog and like nothing around us, like we have to remember to go be with our people. So same stuff, but yes.
So how much formal or informal networking or mentorships or other things like that are available for women in tech?
So much. There's so much.
And that might be part of it, is finding the right people to go hang out with. And honestly, like, this is from the other side. Like one of my current boss at work, he's a fellow at Micron. I got to know him because we became friends, and he kind of was my unofficial mentor.
Right.
Nothing official, anything like that. I was just like, hey, let's go grab a beer, let's go talk about stuff. I got some questions for you, or vice versa. Like that type of stuff is so powerful. So
it
like
really is so powerful.
It's amazing.
It's the old saying of who you know, not what you know.
Yeah. Find me on Facebook, I'll be your friend. I could never be anyone's mentor, at least at this point. I don't want that. But we can talk about stuff. Like I've been there, done it.
So why do you say you can't be a mentor?
Oh, I'm
God, there are so many bad
love to be a
mentors in this
mentor.
town.
I'm
You
just
gotta be
so
better
busy.
than most of them.
What's that?
I said there are so many bad, well, important looking but really bad mentors in town. You gotta be better than them.
Yeah, probably.
Wait, what about the one time at Tech Savvy when you trained the kids?
You know, I was just kidding. I'd be anyone's mentor. I would love it. I would be very good at it.
She'd be humble.
Yes, I had interns and.
Because he turned out fine.
I'm glad you say that. You're turning out okay. I'm totally your mentor.
Yeah.
Who else? Anyone? Generate some conversation. How many of you girls are not in tech but really want to pursue something in tech? That you, like, that's in your head, you're just not in tech. None of you? What do you want to do? Like, what are you doing now, and what do you want to do, if I can call you out?
I've been working as a journalist on the radio.
Oh, really?
Radio interviews and things.
Yeah.
And I mean, seeing how important tech is in journalism, especially like you were saying, the publications weren't early adopters of online social media, and like online readership are obsolete. So that's where I guess my interest is going. But it's such a big world that I'm not exactly sure what it is about the tech industry.
Well, see, that's interesting. So I started a podcast. It's not tech related. I'm not going to get into that, but it's not something I'm familiar with. But I just decided maybe that's really like guy of me to be like, I can totally do that, and then just go and do it. So maybe that's what we need to instill in girls, is like, just do it. Just go do it.
If you fail, then fail forward too, right?
Fail forward.
Yeah, exactly.
What is Mr.
I'm not gonna say his name because
Whatever.
fail fast.
fast.
So
Fail forward, fail all the time, and you'll be fine. But I do think that the younger generation is like more okay with that. I really do, because we keep saying it to them. It's like on internet memes and like, you know, everything, fail, and they're like, okay, we will. Who
Failure is
else?
always an option.
You bring up a really good point.
Thanks.
A lot of women have a fear of failure.
Yes.
And it's really thinking about it in terms of experimentation.
Right.
You know, let's experiment or something like that.
Definitely.
And it was kind of funny when you mentioned about wanting to hire more women.
Yeah.
So I lead a group of project managers, right? Manage technical projects. And I was hiring, and I wanted women because they're awesome project managers.
Right.
And I actually picked a resume. I'm like, it's okay, but it's a woman, so I really want to. And it ended up being a man. So I was like
the name you just didn't.
Yeah, I thought it was a woman, and I picked it, even though I was just kind of like, oh, this is okay, we can work with them.
Yeah.
But I was just so hungry to hire a woman.
Well, that brings up maybe a little controversial thing where like, you still want the right person for the job. And I was like that too, where I would bring in women to the tech savvy and be like, you're just not right for this job. Like, I would love to have, you know, women everywhere. That sounds but that was true. Like, I wanted them to like be that person that hired all women. They weren't right for the job. And maybe that's why I keep saying we need to get to them younger, so that when the time they, you know, get old enough, they've learned all those skills.
Did you end up hiring them?
Oh, no, they were not a good
They were
cultural
not
fit.
good.
They didn't have the skill set or things that we were looking for.
Right.
And ended up hiring this other guy who was just awesome, and he's been a great fit.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
I'll say that.
Preston,
I'm
what?
sorry. I know this is exactly what you wanted, is another white guy talking. But,
Totally.
no, I'll say that, like, from the flip side, so like, I've seen some of that, and some of the resentment or the fear that comes back the other side from, you know, the guys who have been in power the whole time, is that
Yeah.
if diversity and inclusion is not done properly, it can become tokenism. And you know, where we are, and that really ends up hurting everything, because then you've got people who are already looking for people to fail. I'm like, well, yeah, so-and-so has her job because of this, or so-and-so has this job because of black. It's like, I usually, like, I've had somebody on my team say that before. I'm like, literally, I'm like, here's this person, here's this person, here's this person.
Yeah.
It's like, these are my peers and I respect them incredibly, so please tell me what makes them not qualified.
Right.
Where are you seeing this? Give me real examples of,
Right.
well, she got that job because she's a she. No,
It's
tell
like,
me
but
who
if
these
my
people are, what it
project
is.
doesn't perform, or my business doesn't perform, because I just hired the wrong person just because they're
Exactly.
whatever, yeah, then you're just shooting yourself in the foot. I think we're at 4:50. You're more than welcome to stay. We're the last ones in this room. Thanks for staying and not leaving. Thanks, you guys. I appreciate it. And I think they're like streaming this and all of that. So, hi, streamers. Is that a thing? Streamers? Now it is. Oh, why am sorry?
So, are you still working with the guys anymore?
Not really, I don't
I caught them in the news, like, oh, they're not
Yeah,
dead.
they're still moving along, but, yeah, it was
You need
kind
to
of
listen to
weird.
you.
What's that?
You need to listen to you more.
Oh, yeah.
Do they? Or did they?
I don't know if they did. I'm thinking if they listened to you, they probably gone faster.
Yes.
Unless it's a really bad idea, then they might be doing as well.
I don't know, I'm not really sure. Are they
so
streaming through this?
that actually could be.
Well, thank you for coming.
Or it's a, or maybe, yeah. It's one of
Hi.
these.
Oh, sweet.
Right.
Yeah.
It's someone I always learn from, so.
That's very nice.
I just, somebody I got from.
Yeah, I'd love to chat more if you have a minute.
Anyway,
Go ahead.
you go chat with her. I know that you.
Okay.
Last time I do remember you when you felt fall down the boom.
Oh, yeah.
I can sort of that I don't want to breathe though. It's like, so it's like, oh no, she's there all by herself, and your boyfriend at the time seemed to be actually stepping up and which is good, because otherwise you'd have to kill me. As a hypochondriac, I have enough issues.
Oh, I'm glad you came. Thanks for doing that. Oh, yeah.
And now I have to go to the Springs, so.
Oh, fun. That sounds like a nice day. Poor you.
It is, you know, we love rain, especially when you go on the drive. It'll be the drive back. Very large animals on the road will be in the dark. But the snow has melted along the road when things are like this, and there's a moose. And the moose is going, I'm not going to that. Actually, the war story was like 8 or 9 wild turkeys, and they're like, no, we're not moving, we're on the road, and there's nowhere to go, and they're like, yeah, I don't care if you're in the car. Maybe something like that really react.
Well, I pushed for it, No, that was great. I'm glad you asked that. Yeah. You didn't stop it. Oh, that makes sense.
However, I
Oh, that's what they were looking at. Alright, well, just give me the information about your background. Okay, sounds good. What's your name again? Sarah. Sarah, my best friend is Sarah. I hope to hear from you. I don't do this recording because I have like issues with crowds. But I'll be like around and stuff if you want to like grab a start or you're good for nothing.
Every year you sponsor Hackfort, which is, for those of you who are not aware, Hackfort. This is a tech festival that brings the community together to share knowledge and skills with one another. Hackfort.